It begins like any other morning, not with a bang, but with a small inconvenience that feels familiar enough to ignore. A grocery delivery that doesn't arrive, a payment terminal that keeps saying, "try again." A train that stops between stations for technical issues. And for a few hours, America does what it always does. It complains. It refreshes the page. It assumes someone, somewhere, will fix it. At 6:03 a.m. Eastern, the first warning appears as a quiet notification pushed to emergency managers and a few newsrooms that still have a connection. Severe disruption to national logistics networks, unknown origin, expect cascading failures. It reads like a systems update, a line of text, a sterile sentence. But behind it is something bigger, a rupture. At 6:17 a.m., the first viral clip shows a port on the East Coast, cranes frozen mid-air, containers stacked like a city of steel, and no trucks moving. The camera pans across an empty yard that should be roaring with engines. A man in a reflective vest speaks to whoever is filming. "They told us to stand down. We can't move anything. The system's locked." The clip is 30 seconds long. By 6:25 a.m., it's everywhere. And still, most people don't feel fear yet. They feel distance, because a frozen port is someone else's problem. By 6:41 a.m., the first real signal hits the public, a brief banner on television and radio. "Temporary supply chain disruption. Please avoid panic buying." The words panic buying land in the mind like a match. You can tell people not to panic, and you've already taught them what to do. At 7:05 a.m. in a suburb outside Baltimore, a woman opens her pantry and does a quick mental count. 2 days of meals, maybe 3 if she stretches it. She texts her sister, "Should we grab a few things just in case?" The sister replies, "Already on my way." At 7:30 a.m., the first wave begins. It isn't chaos, not yet. It's a quiet migration of carts and car trunks. People walking faster than usual through automatic doors, handing over cards that still work, for now. Buying bottled water, even though the taps still run. It feels almost normal, like storm prep. The same gestures, the same logic. But unlike a storm, there is no forecast, no map, no end time. By 8 a.m., the shelves start thinning. In Chicago, the bottled water aisle is half empty. In Dallas, canned goods vanish in pockets. In Atlanta, baby formula becomes the first flashpoint. Parents standing shoulder to shoulder in front of an empty gap where certainty used to be. A manager tapes a sign to the shelf. "Limit 2 per customer." That sign does not create fairness. It creates urgency. At 8:22 a.m., the markets open and immediately stutter. It isn't a crash, it's a hesitation, like the system itself is trying to decide whether this is real. Then the first breaker trips, trading pauses. News anchors begin talking slower, like they're choosing each word carefully. They show maps of distribution hubs. They show stock footage of trucks. They show graphs that don't matter anymore. Because the truth is simpler. Food is only 3 days away from panic, and America lives on a schedule it never sees. At 9:10 a.m., a grocery clerk in New Jersey watches a man load 30 pounds of rice into his cart. The clerk says politely, "Sir, we have limits." The man doesn't shout. He just looks at him, eyes flat, voice calm. "Limits don't feed my kids." He keeps going. The clerk steps back. Rules have power only when people believe in tomorrow. At 9:45 a.m., a rumor spreads. The grid is next. No one knows where it started. No one can prove it. But in modern panic, proof is irrelevant. People begin buying batteries, flashlights, propane canisters, anything that looks like control. By 10:30 a.m., gas stations begin to choke. Lines wrap around blocks. Drivers sit with engines off, watching the pump like it's a lifeline. The first arguments break out, not because the gas is gone yet, but because the fear is already here. Every idle minute feels like losing. Every car ahead feels like theft. And the background noise of the country changes. Less music, more sirens, more helicopter rotors far overhead. Not war in the streets, just the feeling that the state is moving pieces you can't see. At 11:15 a.m., the government issues a second broadcast. This one is shorter, harsher. Essential services are being prioritized. Do not travel unless necessary. Hoarding will be prosecuted. The word prosecuted sounds absurd when the shelves are empty. And that's when the emotional shift begins. Because people realize something. The government can tell you to be calm. It cannot refill an empty truck. It cannot magically replace a broken logistics brain. And it cannot arrest millions. At noon, schools announce early release. Parents flood roads. Traffic swells. And for a moment, the country looks like it always does. Minivans, buses, commuters. A normal machine. Except the machine is now running on fear. At 12:47 p.m., payment systems begin to flicker. Not everywhere. Just enough to be noticed. One terminal works, the next doesn't. One bank app loads, the next freezes. One ATM spits out cash, the next stares back blank. People start carrying cash like it's oxygen. The first time someone says, out loud, "What if it doesn't come back?" The words hang in the air like smoke. By 1:30 p.m., the port footage is replaced with something closer. A warehouse in Ohio, doors locked, workers sent home. A trucking dispatcher on the phone saying, "I can't route anything. The system's down. We don't have paper backups." Paper backups. The phrase feels like history, like the country assumed it would never need them again. At 2:05 p.m., the internet slows, then stutters, then begins to fragment. Not a total blackout, a patchwork collapse. Some neighborhoods can stream the news. Others can't load a single page. Social media turns into a hall of mirrors. Half truth, half manufactured panic, all emotion. And without reliable information, people begin to imagine the worst. This is the first real casualty. Not electricity, not food, certainty. At 3 p.m., grocery stores close early. Not because they're empty, because the staff is scared, because they've heard about the first fight in a parking lot in Pennsylvania, because someone tried to rush the back door in Michigan, because when the crowd stops acting like customers, you stop being a store. You become a target. By 4:20 p.m., cities begin preparing curfews. Not announced yet, just whispers. Police departments moving units, barricades staged near downtown areas, transit systems slowing for safety reasons. The country is still functioning, but its posture has changed. It's no longer living, it's bracing. At 5:55 p.m., the sun begins to fall and the panic turns sharper. Because day feels manageable, night feels lawless. People who bought too much now sit behind locked doors listening. People who bought nothing now start walking. At 6:30 p.m., the first coordinated community patrol forms in a quiet neighborhood. Flashlights, baseball bats, a few firearms carried openly. They don't call it a militia, they call it being responsible. And across the street, someone watches from behind curtains and wonders if they'll be the first ones to take. At 7:10 p.m., a hospital administrator in North Carolina starts calculating fuel. Generators can run for 3 days at current load. Maybe 4 if they shut down non-essential wings. But what is non-essential when people start arriving dehydrated, diabetic, panicked? In the emergency room waiting area, a father cradles his son and asks the nurse if the pharmacy will still be open tomorrow. The nurse doesn't answer, because she doesn't know. By 8 p.m., the news becomes repetitive, not comforting. Repetitive. Remain calm. Do not travel. Federal response is underway. The words are meant to soothe, but now they sound like delay. And in the minds of millions, a single realization forms. If the trucks don't run, then the country doesn't eat. At 9:30 p.m., the first power failures begin, not from an attack, but from strain. Generators kick on in pockets of neighborhoods, a hum in the distance, a cough of a machine trying to replace a grid. And as the lights die in one block and flicker in the next, the country's psychology shifts again, because darkness changes people. It makes every sound suspicious, every footstep a threat. At 10:15 p.m., a family in Arizona eats by lantern light. They ration without saying the word ration. They split portions smaller than usual, smiling too hard at each other. Outside, the neighborhood is silent, not peaceful, holding its breath. The first day ends the way it began, not with explosions, but with the sense that something invisible has snapped. And now, the second day is coming, the day when people wake up hungry and discover the shelves are still empty. The second morning arrives without a reset. No systems restored notification, no reassuring headline. Just the same stillness and a new kind of awareness. Because on day 2, America stops asking when things will return and starts asking how long it can last. At 6:04 a.m., the first lines appear again, not at stores, at water distribution points, at community centers where someone heard the National Guard might show up. People stand with buckets, coolers, anything that can hold weight. They don't speak much. Conversation has become cautious because everyone is doing the math now. If you have a family of 4 and you have 3 days of food, you don't waste calories on small talk. By 7:20 a.m., a radio broadcast cuts through static in multiple states. It is calm, official. This is a national emergency update. Supply disruptions are ongoing. Aid distribution centers will be established. Do not attempt to enter restricted facilities. The phrase restricted facilities does not deter anyone. It points them. Because people already know where supplies are kept, warehouses, trucks, storage yards. And if the system won't deliver, someone will try to take. At 8 a.m., cities begin to feel the pressure. Not because of war overseas, because the smallest daily habits are gone. No coffee shops, no breakfast runs, no convenience stores open on the corner, and the absence of those tiny comforts becomes a signal. Normal is not coming back today. At 9:15 a.m., the first true panic wave hits. It is not polite, it is fast. A rumor spreads that a shipment arrived at a supermarket outside Cleveland. Cars swarm the parking lot. People leave vehicles in lanes, doors open, engines running. They move like a stampede, not because they want to hurt anyone, but because hunger turns time into an enemy. Inside, staff try to enforce limits, but limits are a concept from yesterday. A woman grabs a case of water, and someone yanks it from her hands. A man shouts, a child cries, a fist swings, and suddenly it isn't a store, it's a contest. By 10 a.m., police arrive. They don't disperse the crowd. They stand at the edge and watch, because they understand what most people don't yet. If they start using force, the crowd doesn't vanish. It reacts. And the city cannot afford a riot in 10 places at once. This is what collapse looks like at street level. Not dramatic, not cinematic. Just authority stepping back because it has no room to move. At 11:30 a.m., the first looting of a pharmacy goes viral. A shaky video, glass on the floor, people grabbing bottled water, bandages, painkillers. One man walks out with armfuls of insulin, not because he needs it, because someone he loves might. And that's how morality changes. It becomes personal. My family, my street, my survival. The nation fades. At noon, the government speaks again. A senior official, face pale under studio lighting, reads from a prepared statement. Critical infrastructure remains operational. Federal continuity is in effect. The United States remains secure. The words "remains secure" do not match what people see outside, and people believe their eyes, not the broadcast. At 1:05 p.m., the next wave arrives. Digital payments fail broadly, not everywhere, but enough. Card readers go dark. Banks freeze transactions. Cash becomes the only language, and millions do not carry enough of it. In a gas station in Missouri, a man tries to pay for fuel with a card. The clerk shakes his head. Cash only. The man stares, mouth open, as if the world has just insulted him. He checks his phone. No service. He looks around. Other drivers are staring too. A woman begins to cry in the parking lot. not loudly, quietly, because she understands what cash only really means. It means the modern world is slipping backward by force. At 2:30 p.m., hospitals become islands. Generators keep the lights on, but supply rooms begin to empty. Nurses ration medication. Doctors make choices they were trained never to make in peacetime. And outside the doors, families gather, asking the same questions over and over. Is it safe? Is it coming here? When will it end? No one has answers. At 3:45 p.m., a new kind of broadcast appears. Not official. A shortwave transmission picked up by hobbyists. A voice reading coordinates, then pausing, then repeating. Distribution point. Supplies limited. Maintain order. The signal fades in and out like a dying heartbeat. But people hear it and something happens. They start moving. Cars fill roads again. Not to work, not to school, to chase rumors of food. Highways clog, accidents happen, vehicles run out of fuel mid-lane, and in the stalled traffic, tempers rise. Because confinement amplifies fear. By 5 p.m., the first curfews are announced. 8 p.m. in major metro areas, 9 p.m. in others. Officially, it's to preserve public safety. Unofficially, it's because darkness is where control dies. At 6:30 p.m., National Guard units deploy to protect critical supply centers. Humvees roll into parking lots. Soldiers stand with rifles pointed down, trying to look calm. But the crowd's response is not relief. It's a question. If soldiers are here, how bad is it? At 7:15 p.m., a distribution center opens in a high school gym. Boxes of rations, water bottles. The line stretches blocks. When the doors finally open, a push surges forward. A woman falls. People step around her, not because they're cruel, because they're desperate. A soldier grabs her arm and pulls her up. For a moment, humanity flashes through. Then it's gone again in the crush. By 8:30 p.m., the center runs out. The announcement is short. No more supplies tonight. The line doesn't dissolve, it hardens. People stand in place like statues, unwilling to accept emptiness. Someone yells, a bottle flies, soldiers tense, and for a second the air feels like it might ignite. But it doesn't. Not yet. The crowd disperses slowly, carrying nothing, walking back into dark streets with hands empty. At 9:40 p.m., the first fires begin. Small, a trash can, a dumpster, then bigger, as someone sets a storefront alight, not to loot, but to express rage. Fire becomes language when words fail. And across the country, on rooftops and porches, people watch orange flickers in the distance and understand. The country is not collapsing all at once. It is collapsing in pieces, neighborhood by neighborhood, hour by hour. At 11 p.m., in a quiet home in the Midwest, a father sits with his family in candlelight. He has a flashlight, a radio, a few gallons of water. Not enough, never enough. His children ask if school will be open tomorrow. He answers gently, no. They ask when the lights will come back. He pauses too long before he says, soon. And in that pause is the truth of the second day. It isn't the hunger that breaks people first. It's the moment they realize no one is coming, that the systems they trusted were not permanent, that safety was always rented, and the lease just ended. The second day ends with America quieter than before, not calmer, just exhausted. And in that exhaustion, the country slips into the most dangerous phase of any crisis, the phase where people stop waiting and start acting. Because the third day is when the real lines are drawn, between neighbors, between communities, between the ones who share and the ones who take. And once that line appears, it doesn't fade easily.